Good morning at this glorious and amazing day, and welcome. So Tuesday, May 25th, we have the first anniversary from George Floyd, and this is a very important topic not only to the black community, but humankind globally. I never felt comfortable with the Black Lives Matter, and I'll explain to you why. People have two descriptions. There's a core description to species that walk on two legs, and they're called humans. And then there's a secondary status. What is the secondary status? The secondary status would be your nationality, your sex, your weight, your ideology. That's only secondary. And it's very important to be able to differentiate between your core description or your secondary status. Why is that? Because humans have a mechanism, especially adult humans, they cannot hurt, they cannot torture, they cannot mistreat another human being. That is our biology. By default, we cannot hurt another human being. However, for this discussion, there are two aspects that could change and shut off that mechanism, that switch, and we could actually torture, hurt, and in many cases derive pleasure from that torture and that hurt. One of them is when humans are tortured and hurt and mistreated when they're children. And the second aspect that could accomplish that horrific mission of shutting off the switch of the brain that cannot hurt, that is dehumanization. Dehumanization is when you take the secondary description and that becomes the core. I'll never forget that horrific interview I watched about 10 years ago on YouTube. I can't believe it, but it was on YouTube. There was a Nazi that was being interviewed, I forget by who. And the whole interview I forgot, but the last part I remember. He asks that Nazi that looks like he was in his 90s, and he looks at him and he asks him, now after all these years, you know, you've grown with knowledge, grown with age, do you regret what you have done in Germany? Do you regret what you have done in the concentration camps? And I'll never forget that look of that Nazi. And he goes, no, they're Jews. Like, I watched it again and I could not believe it. You know, when everyone is doing something, yeah, everyone is doing it, people don't think. But what really happened there? Sadly, Hitler used his brain for the worst things. If Hitler would come out in 1941 and say, by the way, as you're conquering, I'll ask you, you know what? Get these Jews on the trains and just kill them, just wipe them out. I think there would have been some resistance from some people. Because, what do you mean? Because to many, it doesn't matter that their secondary status was Jews, but they're human. So, I'm not sure if that was his intention or not, but the propaganda and the dehumanization worked. So he had 7-8 years of making cartoons, of describing Jews as rats and as a poison, and what that did in the brains of a human being, exactly what I started this conversation. It dehumanized them. So now they're not humans, and this is a phenomenal tactic. If you want to get rid of people, you want to get a lot of people to torture, hurt, kill, get rid of a certain group, just dehumanize them. It's so simple. It's a psychological cancer, I would call. Dehumanizing will slowly shut off the switch of that sensitivity of one human caring for another human. Thursday, December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. When the bus driver turns to the human being and says, could you please get up? Because there's another human being over here that needs your seat. That's not what he really said. Rosa Parks was sitting in a legal seat for the black people. secondary status, but there was more whites on the bus. And 4 people were asked to get up and move to the back of the bus, including Rosa Parks. And she said no. She was sick and tired of being identified as a secondary status. The fact that I'm black, that's just a technical thing. The fact that I'm wearing a pink shirt today, that's just technical. The fact that I'm wearing a white shirt today, that's just technical. The fact that I'm male, that's just technical. The fact that I'm black, that's just technical. That's my secondary status. The first and foremost and the core status of close to 8 billion on planet Earth is human. If you disagree, please let me know the logic why you disagree in the comments. Let me know with logic. I like when people disagree with me with logic, not with yelling and screaming and emotions and narratives. I think it's a disgrace for human beings to be called black. Black lives matter. They're not black. They are not black. They are humans. They are humans. Do you want to know secondary status? If they're male, female, fat, skinny, tall, ideologies, of course we could talk to you. But when you want justice and you say the word black, you lost justice right away. You're identifying them as black. When Hitler saw a black person, I forget the exact words because I read it a few months ago, he basically said, or they are monkeys or they're the closest to monkeys. That's the way he looked at them. That's not their core. You need to identify the species that walk on 2 legs as humans. And therefore, it should be human life matters, period, regardless. Regardless. Human life matters regardless. Regardless, you could write a book of 300 pages. Regardless if they're black, regardless if they're Asian, regardless if they're Mexican, regardless. I think the core sits in the regardless because the regardless is trying to omit the secondary status, not to focus on the secondary status. Because if we say human life matters, of course they matter because they're human. Once you say human, it keeps that natural mechanism of being kind, nice, and generous. When I lived till December in a Jersey, I lived in an apartment building, 90% where the secondary status of those humans were black. We got along. We helped each other. We were one family. Not because black lives matter. Not because I respected black people. No way. I didn't see black people. I didn't see the secondary status. I saw humans. Well, if they're humans, of course we're going to respect and be nice to each other. Sadly, children throughout the world, and we all keep this tradition, this poisonous tradition from our parents, my grandparents. When little children sit around the dinner table, they hear their father and mother say, oh, this Jew, oh, this black, oh, this Arab, oh, this Jew. What they're doing, and they don't realize, is they're switching their secondary status for the core. Let's hope that we could change this and start identifying people as humans versus identifying their core with their secondary status. Thanks for listening. Have yourself a wonderful day. And I so look forward. The world look like a forest where every tree has a different shape and different size. Yet they have one thing in common. All of the trees behind me and all the trees on planet Earth come from one soil. And that's where they're all planted. And they all live in unison, they all live together, and they all live in harmony. Because it's fine to be different. It's fine to have that secondary status. Because at our core, we all come from the soil. Bye now.